All right. Hey, everybody. Casey Miller here from Positive Coaching Alliance. I am here with RC Buford, who we are super excited to have joining PCA today for a conversation around many things, including youth sports and how some lessons can be learned, of course, at the professional level. RC is the CEO of the San Antonio Spurs and Entertainment and has been with the organization for many, many years. He also played in college, has coached in the NBA, has coached in college, has raised youth athletes, and so he has a great perspective for the PCA network. And so thank you so much for joining us from San Antonio for this session.
Thank you, Casey. Excited to be spending time and thanks for everybody's time this afternoon.
Absolutely. And so for those of you who are just tuning in, just again, want to welcome you all to the feed and want to encourage you, if you have questions for RC during this time, we'll be live for about 30 minutes. So definitely encourage people to write in their questions if they have any, and I'll make sure to relay those to RC. And again, just want to thank RC for his support serving on PCA's National Advisory Board and for being a part of the movement to try to make sure that kids have a positive character building youth sports experience, which right now is a little different since we don't have sports. But maybe just to kick it off, talk a little bit about how you've been staying connected with some of your staff and maybe how the team has been staying connected during the last month or so of this hiatus from basketball and all sports.
You know, I think we've tried to over communicate during this time when we are socially distant, and really emphasize socially distancing doesn't mean socially isolating. And so we've got a pretty good cadence within our coaching staff, within our team. We're doing virtual workouts together with players. So twice a week, we've got our guys in their garages oftentimes with their workout gear and virtual workouts where we can get several of them on the same workout, giving each other the business and continuing to engage. Organizationally, we've tried to really set up a cadence that provides great opportunities to stay engaged, both from a business and from a social environment. Mondays and Fridays, we have our directors and above calls for an hour kind of to set up the week and to close the week. And Tuesdays and Thursdays, we've got our leadership group spending time together. And then on Wednesdays, we have a virtual town hall across all 400 staff in San Antonio, in Austin, and around the world. And so we're trying to keep engaged, bringing in outside resources to talk about different aspects of work and life and how we need to respect the difficulties and the challenges of working from home, but also how we can learn together. We've had virtual happy hours, virtual book clubs, and really just trying to over communicate and stay engaged with each other.
That's such good. And I loved your line, socially distant doesn't mean socially isolated, because I know that everyone, and it's not just, one city or one state, the entire United States and globe, really, many of whom are facing this, time period where you're staying home and you're being more virtually connected. So I love that, and trying to over communicate with staff. And, I think a lot of the Positive Coaching Alliance community, they are parents and coaches who could be tuning in. And so is there any advice? You mentioned, the team is doing virtual workouts and, having workouts in their garage together. Do you have any maybe advice or tidbit that you could share with some potentially youth or high school basketball coaches if they want to stay connected, or an idea to stay connected with their team during this time?
Well, again, I think the virtual meetings, and Pops had a couple of lunches with the team where all the coaches and the players were together and broke bread from each other's, sheltering from home. I think there's also unbelievable opportunities to learn right now in virtual environments. And I think there's tremendous YouTube engagements that you can learn from. There are all kinds of opportunities like PCA's putting together to gather as coaches and have conversations about here's what my problems are, and here's the problems that others are facing, and how do you problem solve together. And I think we're business as usual will not be the same when we come back. And I don't think we can approach our time in sheltering from home and working from home without trying to figure out what our new normal might look like and how we can all grow towards that. I don't know that any of us will know exactly what it looks like, but there are some parts of this that are getting more clear, and I think that understanding how to build teams without high fives anymore. I mean, that's going to be one, that just may not be the case as we move forward. So how do you create engagements and team building aspects and still include social distancing practices?
Totally. That's a great point. And for those of you who are just tuning in, we're here with R.C. Buford, the CEO of San Antonio Spurs Sports and Entertainment, and just want to welcome you all to the live feed. Let us know where you're watching from in the comments. I have my phone right here following along for those people who have questions. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask RC, please chat that in. I wanted to shift gears a little bit, just thinking about, at some point we will get back to sports, right? It's going to, look different potentially than it did a month ago, but thinking about, Positive Coaching Alliance's core mission, again, is providing this character building sports experience for youth athletes. And so that's okay. When you think about as in your former role when you were the GM of the Spurs, or now recruiting employees, how much emphasis do you put on the character of the individual, and how do you assess what type of person you want to hire or you want to bring to the team?
Well, our ownership has given us a long opportunity to be together, and I think organizationally we have a values-based leadership programming that gives us a roadmap. Shame on us after being together for 25 years if we don't know what works here, and our values of integrity, success, and caring from a business side, and the ability to use that to build teams are vital in how we work together, how we build our team. We haven't found a magic assessment tool that identifies values, but I think the more research that we can do on player recruitment to understand who they are as people and the relationships and the impact of character on the relationships that they've had as they've grown up is the best indicator that we've found on how they've treated and worked together with their coaches and teammates in other environments. Pop's got a line that he talks about, they am who they am. So, if people have been good teammates in the past and we put a positive environment around them, that should be a consistency as we hopefully create a team that has a values alignment.
Right. I love that. And I want to get to one question from Seth James. Seth, it sounds like he's tuning in from Illinois. So Seth, thanks for watching. He's asking, what separates the Spurs way from the way other teams operate, communicate, set standards of performance, etc., and what factors most contribute to the organization's success? So talk a little bit about what separates the Spurs way from other organizations.
I mean, I haven't been around a lot of other organizations, so I can't talk about specifically to other organizations, but I think a values alignment is where it starts. I think Tim Duncan and Pop held themselves to such high standards that it raised the standards of all of us in the program. In 19 years, Tim Duncan has never been late to a meeting once. Now as a coach, it continues on. He was always the first one back in the gym at the end of a season to start preparing for the next year. And I just think he and Pop held themselves to standards that raised all of our standards. We don't have a lot of rules. I think I've heard Coach Krzyzewski at Duke talk about this. Rules makes people perform or have habits that they're conforming to somebody else, where if you can get people to establish their own set of standards, that then they're performing for their own motivation. And I think that's been a similar impact within our program, is that our guys have held themselves to a set of standards that raise all tides.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing advice too for, again, like the youth and high school coaches that are watching for all sports that they could take away. And I love the example of Tim Duncan has never been late to a meeting as a player or as a coach, and he's been doing this for so many years, and that little thing is so important. So I love that little story.
He didn't do that. He didn't do that trying to hold other people accountable. He did that to hold himself accountable, and then that influenced the rest of our team. Respect for each other.
Right. Yep. And I'm going to get to Estella. I see your question. I will ask that in just 1 second. I also saw Jason wrote in a question as well. Marie, thanks for watching from Virginia. We got some cities from all around the country that are watching, so thanks for tuning in. So thinking about, as difficulties have presented themselves, can you talk about an example of a leader who really empowered the team to move past a tough moment? And I think you had an example in mind you wanted to talk about, but just an example of a leader that, again, empowered a team to move past a tough moment.
Well, I think, one of the toughest moments that we have had as an organization was the 2013 NBA Finals, when 28 seconds to go in Game 6, we're ahead 3-2, and we have a 5-point lead. And Ray Helen hits a shot at the buzzer. We go into overtime. We lose that game when it looked like we were poised to win a championship. And watching Pop build a team back that was really emotionally crushed. It started the very second we were done with the locker room. He put the team in a bus. We went and had dinner together, and this would have been, late at night. Probably we didn't get to the dinner till 12:30, 1 o'clock, and we're there together for about 3 hours with family and players. And he went table to table and got people looking past what had just happened and appreciating what each other brings to the group and starting to build back up. And we came back. We ended up losing Game 7 as well, but emotionally, we were in a much different place for Game 7, and we ended up losing by 2 or 3. But we had a shot to tie the game with 20 seconds to go that we missed in a tip-in. That we actually played better in Game 7, even though we weren't in a lead position late in the game. But from that point forward, the way he brought that team and empowered them and shared the responsibility with them, we got together the next year to start the season, and the very first day of training, we sat as a team and we watched the video of Game 6 together, and we lived that moment, and then we got past it and we didn't talk about it again. And the media wanted to keep rehashing it, and we handled it within our own community in the way that we all took responsibility to each other. And then it was over. We weren't going to continue to dwell on it. And over the course of that next season, we come back, we win 62 games, and go back and beat Miami, who we lost to in 13. beat them in probably the best basketball we'd ever played as an organization. So it really started from the difficult ending to game 6, and it was just a progression of build-up that Pop was very intentional about. I think the other thing that is often fun to see Pop is to give the responsibility, especially in important moments, to the team. If Tony will come into a coach's meeting during a timeout and he tells Pop this, that, and other, Pop will say, Tony, go get in the huddle and you tell those guys. And there's been a lot of examples that I've seen with Steve Kerr in Golden State and Pop where they put it on the players to go deliver the message and work through the problems we're trying to solve as a team, rather than feeling like a coach has to have all the answers. And I think it really empowers the players in a unique way and gets them to take even more ownership and responsibility for the execution coming out of the timeouts.
Right. And I think, again, bringing it to the Positive Coaching Alliance community that could be watching, thinking about high school teams and youth teams, like absolutely empower your players to, have them pick a play or explain the play that they came up with and see how it goes. And if it doesn't go well, there's lessons to be learned. I think that's one of the beautiful things about sports, is that it's an endless procession of teachable moments. And it's such a great environment to learn skills that can be used in life. So I love that story.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No, go ahead.
The other thing I would say is that we learn more from mistakes than we do from executing perfection. And so I think the more that you can give players permission to make mistakes and learn from them, not just accept mistakes, but make mistakes, and then how do you debrief? How do you learn from the mistakes that happen?
Right. Yep. And that's, as you know, one of the pillars of PCA is overcoming mistakes, being okay with making mistakes, wanting to make mistakes, especially in practice, because that's how you get better. That's how you learn. So, going back to Estella's comment, Estella Valdez, thanks for watching. Going back to kind of the business setting and the communication during this time, she's wondering right now with working from home, what do you do that helps open communication, and what do you expect from your colleagues? And this is, I think, specific to kind of this time of working from home. You talked a little bit about technology and using video conferences, but is there anything else that encourages that open communication between, you and the staff?
I think it starts with transparency, and people have to be safe to ask questions, to challenge thoughts, to allow for the variance that happens when you're working in an unfamiliar environment. And then to ask really good questions. I think as leaders, one of the best skills that we can get is to ask good questions, because I think you'll learn more. You'll make people understand that it's important for the leader to learn, which then is a great modeling exercise for the person to see how important it is to learn. And then I think the even more important, if you can get other people to solve problems and commit to solutions by having them be their ideas, it makes their commitment to the solution and to the problem you're trying to solve even more enhanced. And I think that's been a real hallmark of Pop as a leader, is he doesn't care who has the right answer as long as we get the right answer. And people, when we meet as a team, as a staff, he's going to ask for input. He's going to want preparation and a well thought out ideation session that then brings us together with the best solution, not just an individual solution.
Right. Yeah, that's great advice. Asking questions for leaders. And Stella, thanks so much for that comment. We're going to be live here with RC Buford, the CEO of the San Antonio Spurs Sports and Entertainment, for about another 10 minutes. So if you have questions, definitely chat them in. Want to get to another one from Seth. He is wondering who were/are your most important influences throughout your career. So important people that have influenced you in your career.
I mean, I think first my family have been incredibly influential and have given me great opportunities to grow as a coach, to grow as a person, to experience life differently than I ever dreamed I would growing up in Kansas. Um, the next one would clearly be Pop and the team of leaders that we've been together with over the course of time that have all had different contributions in different ways. And then Larry Brown was really the first mentor that I had as a coach, and learning at with a Hall of Fame coach who may be the most curious person I've ever been around, and so um, creating an environment of safety to be curious, I think, has gave me a runway that gives freedom for creativity.
A lot of hearts and likes are flying across the screen. People are loving what you're saying. So it's great advice. And so you mentioned, obviously your family being a huge influence in your career and just as you as a person. And so thinking about, your kids grew up playing youth sports, both played in college. Can you talk about how you approached sports parenting at the youth and high school level? And again, if there's any tips and tools that parents who have current athletes right now might be able to glean from someone who did it well.
Our kids probably didn't have much choice. My wife was a professional golfer and traveled around the world um, playing professionally, and then uh, being in a family with me as a coach, they were at games and in the sporting environment from I think Chase was less than 10 days old when he sat through his first basketball game. So um, giving them, but it was never. It was just what they loved doing, and they loved competing. And our daughter Cece, who's a college golf coach now, um, she liked playing golf. She really loved volleyball and basketball growing up, and then came to golf late. And she found out that it wasn't the playing aspect that was what made her passionate about golf, but it was being a part of a team and the team environment and the mentoring of of girls. And I think that's why she went into coaching now, is because she had an opportunity to go play professionally when she was done with college, but she really she didn't love living out of a suitcase chasing a white ball. She really loved being a mentor and being a team builder, and I think that's the real uh, joy that my life has brought to me and to our family, is to learn how important it is to build teams, whether they're youth sports teams or whether they're coaching staffs and professional teams, or whether they're organizational teams and departments that work together and collaborate and enjoy the success of others.
Right. That reminds me too. I don't know if you watched The Last Dance, the first two episodes on ESPN last night, but Michael Jordan says at some point, I think it's in the second episode, my parents always wanted us to play organized sports so that we could learn about life, talking about his youth sports and how amazing of a platform it is and that lesson of building teams in life. So I think that's awesome. A couple of
For
people
anybody who didn't get to see it, I'd recommend it. It's and we've only seen two episodes, but wow.
so good. And now it's every Sunday, I think. So got it
Yeah.
on our calendar. So John Jackson is wondering, what's a good way to get started in the front office of a professional organization?
So I think the best thing that you can do is to developed a personality that works well in a team environment, a commitment to being a part of a team, and then a value that gives you a unique skill set that can help an organization grow. And I think that value can come in multiple different environments and multiple different skills and multiple. There's nothing particular you can say. If you go do this, this will happen. I think, but figuring out how you can add value to an organization in a team environment, I think, is the first thing that I'd say.
Yep. Good question, Josh, or excuse me, John. And then Channing wrote in, what are your experiences and or recommendations for someone transitioning into basketball from another profession like engineering? So Channing, I don't know if you can share more if there's like a specific thing you're talking about, but in general, do you have any advice for that, RC?
Again, I think it's, if you want to get in that environment, first of all, you got to recognize how competitive that environment is. And there are 30 professional basketball teams in the United States. There are 300 colleges. So the opportunity in the or there's 300 Division I colleges, 300 some thousands of colleges. There are just more jobs available in the college environment than there are in the professional sports environment. You'll have to be passionate. You'll have to work really hard, and you'll have to accept that it's not an easy. There's not a roadmap that you can just say, here's how it goes. One of our entry-level people in our basketball department now has applied for the same position for 4 years as a lawyer, and joined our group this year. And now we're smacking ourselves wondering why it took us 4 years to recognize how talented Brandon is, but to recognize that this is not an easy path, that is going to take a lot of commitment, and it's a very unusual life that you're getting ready to join.
For sure.
It's not 9 to 5.
It is not 9 to 5. That is true. Channing, good question. And maybe just to wrap it up as we enter, the last few minutes, obviously RC, you serve on Positive Coaching Alliance's National Advisory Board. And I think sometimes people hear the term, positive coaching, and people have different thoughts and opinions about what that means. And when you hear the term positive coaching as someone, again, who's played in college, coached in the NBA, coached in college, NBA Executive of the Year, and have been around sports your whole life, what does positive coaching mean to you?
I think that means coming together from a values approach, from being able to hold yourself accountable in ways that you would want your team to be accountable. And I think as I watched young kids that were in my own kids' environment, as I coached my own kids, as I watched and evaluated talent, it's shocking to me how often that coaches don't hold themselves accountable in the same way that they want their team to be held accountable. And I think the atmosphere that we all create for young kids is going to have a huge impact on them for a long time. And it always is shocking to me to see high school coaches who, when people leave their environment, oftentimes it's the last time they'll ever play organized sports, and they leave miserable. And I can't imagine that if we were coming through this, that's how we would want to be coached. It doesn't mean you don't have to coach hard. It doesn't mean you don't have to hold people to incredibly rigorous standards. It doesn't mean you don't have to demand execution, but you don't have to humiliate people. That's not building a team in our mind. It's empathy. it's humility, it's getting people to want to be part of something bigger than themselves, and then going to work every day trying to get better.
Love it. I love it. And that's why you're on our National Advisory Board. Okay, last question. Any show that you're watching? Any show that you recommend to people or book?
Um, I'm going through so many right now. There's just unbelievable opportunity to to learn in this environment. With all the YouTube environment, there are all kinds of seminars similar to what PCA has as is creating. There's an author, a young author named Ryan Holiday, who has written several great books that are not hard reads, but Ego is the Enemy, The Obstacle is the Way, and Stillness is the Key are all three really good kind of ways to sit back and evaluate where you are and who you are, and how you might want to carry yourself going forward.
Yeah, we did one of these Facebook Live episodes last week with Herm Edwards, and he was talking about how this time is such an important time for reflection and self-reflection. So, we can look up those books and paste them in the link. And I just want to thank again, the Spurs community, the Spurs Academy, Spurs Give, the PCA community. Thank you guys all for tuning in for this episode with RC. And RC, thank you for your time. We'll be doing another one of these next week, so make sure you follow the PCA page to stay up to speed on our next session. And RC, we are looking forward to seeing the Spurs and all sports back in action whenever it's safe to do so. But until then,
we're all ready for that. And thanks for everybody's time. I would really encourage you all to use this time to take care of yourselves. And I think that to create the balanced environment that's going to allow you to be successful as parents, successful as coaches, successful within your professions. It's a really challenging platform we're all learning from. And I think we won't be coming back to business as usual. So I think it's a great opportunity to try to figure out how we can adapt to our new normal in a way that's healthier for all of us.
Absolutely. Let's make the most of it. We're all in it together. So thank you guys. Thank you, RC. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Casey.